Have you had that same haircut since you were in 5th grade?
Shut up. Okay, welcome back.
Stop. Why do you think you get to do the intro? You do not get to do the intro.
Ladies first.
Welcome to the Texas Poker Experience. My name is Caitlin. This is my favorite boy haircut, Craig Cyr.
Yay. Welcome back, everybody. We wanted to recap some goings on in Texas poker. Monster Meetup Week concluded with a massive crush of a 500K guarantee tournament. They were well over $1 million, I think closer to 1.2.
I talked to somebody who fired 9 bullets. I think they ended up bagging on their 10th because I saw them go out on number 9.
Did they cash for more than $5,400 to cover their 9 bullets? Or?
I know they got the men cash because they found the bag, but I'm so sorry.
Min cash, I believe, was less than $5,400.
No, it was $1,030. I got one myself.
On less than 9 bullets, I hope.
Yes, less than 9 bullets, but not by a lot. I did fire excessively. I just, it's so hard when you have so much money into this player pool where like 2/3 of the player pool. You feel like you got this sick edge, or at least I did, and I try to find the bag, but God, tournaments are so frustrating to me. I don't quite have that skill set yet. I've still done probably less than a dozen.
Tournaments are very difficult. I find them to be quite visceral. People either love them or hate them. I'm a little more on the hate them. I consider them to be the nut low. I don't enjoy talking about them per se. Watching the final tables when there's so much money at stake, when you have a flip with ICM implications of, tens of thousands of dollars between 1-2 players, it's really, really fascinating. Unfortunately, this one ended up in a 6-way chop, which was kind of uneventful. I was, streaming the final table.
Wasn't it like 2 or 3 in the morning at that point when they
Yeah, and I intentionally, I keep pretty late hours
and
anyways.
Most of them had probably fired multiple bullets and had been there since Wednesday. And if I myself found my bag at a 2 a.m. flight, or excuse me, a 6 p.m. flight, which means we bagged up at 3 a.m. to get down to the 35 players in the Friday night flight that bagged.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I totally understand the chop from the player standpoint, especially when you're talking about life-changing money happening on a flip, which likely happens in tournaments when you get to the top end of the payouts like that. But from a viewer standpoint, it's a little bit frustrating because it's just, oh man, I want to see that drama. I don't really want to be a part of it myself, but I want to see it. I want to see the blood. And you just don't get that.
You can just watch like Bravo TV if that's the fix you need, honey.
I suppose. I'm a big Yellowstone fan. I'm almost through season 4, but I guess that's all the blood I can take. So more.
I don't know why. We're just like, men would never be able to have a period. You weak creatures.
Fair enough. I have no idea.
Can you imagine a blood clot coming out of yourself and that just being like casual?
Nope.
Why are we talking about this on a male audience-driven podcast? Shut the fuck up, Caitlin. Okay.
Continued response up until this point, of course. Continued positive response with the pod. Super, super fun. I'm enjoying doing this a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited for everybody who is happy to listen to me verbally abuse Craig for 45 minutes every week. That's super fun for me. Thank you.
Well, here to pile on, we have actually our first unknowing guest. I will say, have no idea what he is jumping into, but we have our first guest, Eric, someone we both know personally. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Welcome, Eric.
Eric, I guess you could tell us a little bit about yourself. I could tell the listeners a little bit about you, or would you prefer to do it yourself?
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot. Go for it. What do you got?
All right. I met Eric at a private poker game, and he had poker ambitions of his own. He found out that I build tables, and he told me about this endeavor that he is on, where he has a low stakes poker game. It's a no limit game, but it is capped, and the blinds are quarter 50. That is 25 cent, 50 cent poker. I played a lot of that in college, which was about 20 years ago, not to date myself, but I thought that was super interesting. Not only that you want to do it, but that you want to do it in a manner that's not played on a dining room table with paper cards. You wanted to make the upfront investment in buying a brand new custom table, but also keeping the stakes low so that people can learn the game without the painful financial lessons that a lot of people pay.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give like a little bit of history of the game, during COVID.
I just thought you read of like
Oh my God.
poker in general. I was just like, oh God.
Nope, no
We only
poker
have
history.
45 minutes, Eric. Jesus.
Well, I was born in the great city.
I was going down the riverboat down Mississippi.
I couldn't wait during COVID to just sit around a table with a bunch of strangers and pass filthy cards and chips back and forth.
That's
and just
great.
breathe dirty air.
True.
So when I got my second shot, I hit a couple of live tables. I stumbled into some money. I probably shouldn't have. I think I sucked out on a couple of big hands early on and just sort of caught the bug for the game. So yeah, I like sitting at a nice table and resting my elbows on the nice padding, and that felt better than in college, literally playing with coins on a dining room table. So yeah, I put some money into chips. I put some money into a table. I just like entertaining and having people buy, and having stakes like 25, 50 cent, minimum buy-in of $20, maximum buy-in of 50 or 60. People can afford to come and just have fun and lose some money or win a tiny bit of money on a weekend and not get broken. And I think it's a really good thing for the game. Maybe we can get some people into the game that do end up becoming fish for Caitlin.
Oh, here's the thing about me is I can't feed my family with a $60 max buy-in.
Well, one thing that I think is nice is that
I don't have a family.
You do cap the buy-in at $60. One thing that Caitlin and I talk about a lot on here is how a lot of the games in Texas are either uncapped or match the stack, and that makes the game play so much deeper than the blinds might suggest. And that's something that's nice about your game, is that it actually is capped. It's going to keep people from getting hurt too badly. And like I said, they can compete. I mean, you can buy in $60 and compete. Even late in the evening, it's not like there's someone sitting there with $700 in a quarter 50-cent game. So it lets people compete for a small price and really kind of get their feet wet before they go out into some of these poker clubs or some of these other private games that are, much higher stakes, a lot more money on the table, and people playing for real.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there are some people that play 1-2 or sometimes bigger games that show up at my 25, 50 cent game, and they'll just try things that they would not try elsewhere. It's a very socially interesting environment. People are willing to, call an all-in bet with what you got. Was it King 4 the other day?
Yeah. I decided to get tricky with Ace King pre-flop, and I just decided to flat it because I figured there was a straddle on, and I figured the straddle was going to raise, the straddle being directly to my left.
I'm so embarrassed for you. You're bragging about flatting with Ace King in a microstakes game pre-flop.
Now, I will say the straddler was another very regular player.
It's really tricky. I saw his stack of $15 and I was like, that's going home with me and you're never going to see it coming.
We'll just mute your mic for the rest of this story. So, I mean, I did expect a raise. The straddler being directly to my left, I expected a raise. And so I ended up just way over ripping it. Just expecting to take down all the flats.
It's so awesome that you're doing a hard card history right now so that I won't be able to later.
Doesn't count. We'll give this an exemption.
Yeah, no, please tell me more about the $20 hand in your microstakes game. Let's take up all that airwave.
I ended up going all in for 108 in a quarter 50-cent game pre-flop, and I got a call from a hand that I dominated, King 4 suited.
God, I hope they beat you. Is that the end of the story?
I won the hand. Thank you very much. Got the full double and still lost. Still lost money for the session. But yes, that's really what we're talking about here. Is there's a mix of players that can really mix it up and do some wild things, but it's still just an amount of money that's not really going to hurt anybody. I mean, you can really learn some valuable lessons, or you could even win a little bit and just realize just how crazy the game can be. And just because someone's stuffing $108 in, 200 big blinds doesn't mean that they have the goods. Yeah,
I'd say my perspective, and I talk about this with a lot of players that are more accustomed to higher stakes play. Like if you're playing 5-10 or 10-20 with any amount of regularity and then you sit down at a lower stakes game, it's hard for you to play the same way because the pots are so much smaller. You do feel like you can get more creative and more reckless with your play. And I know a lot of players, and especially that play online at the higher stakes, and they don't want to play 1-2, 1-3 matches. They're uninterested because they know they're probably just going to be donating.
They know they're negative EV when they play those games because they just don't care enough about the money. it's really interesting because that happens no matter what the stakes are, right? That 100, 200 game, there were guys sitting at that table that amount of money, $20,000, $30,000, not going to change their life. I'm not saying that they wouldn't prefer to win that amount versus lose that amount.
I disagree. Like, I'm not going to call anybody out specifically at that lineup, but I'd say less than half of that lineup was playing within their means that they're comfortable with or that they could afford to lose even. I felt like more than half the table was shot taking, which is why it was so interesting to me that Doug was offering so much action. And
right.
At the end of the stream, for those that didn't watch, Doug left about $69K on the table. Brad Owen got in the hole really early. In his very first hand, he went all in for 20 plus K with a flush draw, and they ran it twice, brick. And he fought his way back playing quite exploitatively and taking a few chances. I was pretty proud of whatever. But I was impressed by his play. But yeah, that's the whole joke that everyone keeps talking about, that Doug Polk is like, I think on Twitter or his podcast, he said he's like stuck $300K for January alone, just playing middle stakes, to him, especially middle stakes poker.
Right. That kind
in
of
Texas.
That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What's interesting is consider a spot that Doug would have no problem taking, but Brad, you have to assume that amount of money, it's shot taking for him. And like you said, for over half the lineup, I think they were shot taking.
Getting real sexy.
Sure. But still, that amount of money is going to mean a lot more. And that's going to make it a lot tougher to take advantage of a really
you could
light
see it
spot.
all over their face. That's like the emotional drama of poker, and especially these bigger stakes. Like, they're on camera. You get to see like someone's life flash before their eyes. And like in some of the earlier streams I did, it's kind of hilarious because I was still so new to playing professionally and playing on camera that there are a couple of pots I got into, and I'm working on them for content for later, analyzing the video. But I'm just like, I got my head in my hair, and I'm like, my head's on the table. I'm like visually frustrated because I'm playing this like 6K pot, and I thought I was in the lead, and then all of a sudden they shove on me, and I'm like, ah!
Eric, what was the term you used? You did a ladies only night last weekend, I believe, and you used the term human drama. I believe.
Yeah.
And this was even smaller. This was 5 cent, 10 cent, right?
Yeah, that's
just
right.
for purely just women only, of course, but purely just beginners. I mean, there was like 2 women that have ever played poker before, I believe, and this whole table.
Yeah, at a table of 8, and just to watch someone tank fold, like being in the blender for a minute over like 65 cents, maybe like $3, $5, $6 at the most.
Right. That's the incredible thing about poker is you get that human drama at every single level. Because people want to compete. Sometimes it's not about the money. Sometimes it is about the money.
Oh, I know for me, like on a losing day, like it's like, okay, like I manage my bankroll. I do this professionally. But if I hit my max loss yesterday at the lodge, I wasn't playing particularly well. I got tilted, like not my best, day in the arena, so to speak. But like, I don't think I was sweating the cash. I was sweating my competitive nature. I was sweating the fact that, I took a misstep. And that's way harder than the financial loss, I'd say, most of the time.
Yeah, this
Watch
last
me
weekend,
get broke as fuck, and then I'm like crying over the money too. On top of
at Eric's game,
aspect.
this quarter 50 game, which I would tell anyone if they asked why are you going to this quarter 50 game, I would say to have fun because it's a frigging blast. I mean, it is such a blast. I brought my espresso machine to this game, which involved like 60 pounds of shit in a rolling tub that I had to bring downtown Austin.
Stop it. You're telling a story about what a fun, cool guy you are because you brought your espresso
No, I'm talking about what an idiot I am.
Wait, I can't even wrap my mind around it.
But what we're talking about though is I got into this game. I was into the game for $220, which
you bring your own grinder, bro.
Which is like 4 buy-ins, and I was getting competitive. I was bluffing, and I found the nuts numerous times, and not in my own hand. I uncovered them by my reckless betting, and I was getting steamed. I may not have shown it, maybe I did, I don't know, but I was getting a little bit steamed up just from being in 4 buy-ins, even though it's just $200.
100%.
Definitely revenge range for you for...
Yes. Had the revenge range going about 30 minutes in the game.
Yeah, I know we're going to get into talking about advice. So like, let me tell you right now, revenge ranges, they bite ya.
Negative EV.
Don't do it.
Negative EV.
hardcore.
I made a lot of money on Deuce 7 last night, so I don't know about that.
That is true. Yeah, private game with the Deuce 7 game on. More Deuce 7s than I've ever seen pulled off successfully in that particular game. Any game, I think, ever. But that was incredible. There was a lot of them last night. Our topic of the week, as you just alluded to, advice in poker and kind of getting started in poker. Is there any advice that you got along the way that really has stuck with you or still sticks with you today?
I do have a buddy, Paul. I'll give Paul a shout out. He took a liking to me right away. We played 1-2 at TCH, and he got me playing Deuce to 7 single draw, and he was sort of my foray into some of the private higher stakes games in town. And he always told me that I had the recipe, which essentially is fearlessness is the most important aspect. And he always harkens back to a time where I was stuck in this Deuce to 7 game, and he had never seen me do it before, but I topped off when I saw a weaker player was in the game and splashing around, and I had the confidence to put more money on the table. And that's definitely been foundational to me, the things that Paul has said and used to guide me. Mm-hmm. I think a huge thing when you're first starting out is mindset centric. I mean, obviously you have to have the money to play. That's just like, you must be this tall to ride this ride. Yep. Don't get yourself into trouble. The bankroll is key. Before I quit my job, I probably spent 1.5 years building my bankroll on top of my salary. I was working 40 hours a week at my job and 40 hours on the felt at night and on my days off. So the dedication is a huge piece, and the mindset of knowing that this is not a walk in the park. This is a punishing, highly polarizing activity. No limit, especially. I mean, they talk about it in rounders. Like, people can't handle the swings, the no limit.
Yeah, it's a little bit overdone in the movie, but it is true.
No, it's not, honestly, relative to the experience of going through it. In my first year of poker, I had several months where, like, the first 2 weeks, I ran really well. I was, crazy up for the month, and then by the end of the month I was struggling to make a profit for the month. I had at least 2 months like that, and you have to learn those mistakes on the way. You have to learn how to weather it, just like any other profession.
Yeah. What about you, Eric? Any good advice from people that you met through poker?
Yeah, well, from people I met through poker, I don't know where this came from, but having one thing that you bring to the table before you sit down, just if what you're thinking about when you're going into the game is like that thing you saw in Rounders where you trap someone for a lot of money, cool, think about that. If you like a Brad Owen YouTube video or something, just like come in with one thing that you want to work on, one thing that you want to try. And then when you find that particular situation, you're ready for it. Like, you have that thing that you want to do in that game.
Like, for example, I'm going to 3-bet like when I'm in position, that kind of thing.
I want to 3-bet in position. Yeah, absolutely. I want to get my shirt off at the table.
Right. Which coincidentally, it's funny you bring that up. That happened last night.
It did happen last night. I don't know who.
I do. It was really unfortunate.
Right?
Really, really super unfortunate.
Y'all have to say that it's not me. Everyone is picturing me now.
Oh, no, it was definitely it was definitely Eric.
It was my nipple. It was my nipple, okay?
Yeah, both of them.
I wasn't even there.
In all of their glory. It was unfortunate. It's the only word that comes to mind.
No.
My advice, I've gotten so much, it's kind of hard to narrow down to one thing. In fact, I don't think that I can narrow it down to one thing. I've had so much poker in my life. If I had to name two things that have shaped me into the person that I am today, it's golf and poker. I've spent countless hours immersed in both. But back at the golf club game that I started 8 or 9 years ago, we alluded to it, I believe, on the first episode of this podcast. That at the time was lucrative for me in a time when I had just given up professional golf. I was pretty much broke. I mean, I wasn't facing massive debts. I'd been smart financially in that regard. But I mean, I found myself around 30 years old, no money really saved up. I found myself behind the 8 ball. It's time to start kind of building. And, you know, if I want to have a life, if I want to have a family, if I want to, you know, I'm going to have to kind of play catch up a little bit. And so that amount of money was meaningful. And I remember thinking, as I started to save up some money, I thought, oh, I have a bankroll. I could play a little more poker. Like, you know, I could afford to lose some money now. For the first time really in my life, I'm actually appropriately rolled. I could start playing 1-2, maybe even some 2-5. And I had a friend pull me aside and just tell me how important it is to manage the money in poker the same way you would manage the money in your life. And it's super important not to overextend the same way, you know, if you make $30,000 a year, you probably shouldn't be buying a $500,000 home. You know, you're overextending yourself. You probably don't need that $500,000 home, things like that. And I found that to be really, really, really good advice. And the other thing that he was pointing out was this poker game is good for you now, but it could literally go away tomorrow. If guys stop playing poker, that game is just gone, and that massive chunk of your income that you're talking about that's changing things for you, that it could change backwards the same way. And
I think that's something really fascinating about the Texas poker scene and the Austin scene in particular right now, is just how quickly it can change. So the first club opened officially, in 2015, right? And now it's like clubs are opening and closing at such a high turnover rate because rents are high and seat rental fees are low. Like, it's obviously harder for these clubs to make a profit getting $10 an hour from every player rather than getting to rake the pots. That's why private games still exist. And we've seen like a lot of clubs come and go.
Right. We were talking about this just the other night.
And the players move. The games move. Like, oh, yeah, there's this like juicy game down on like Houston Street where like, it's gone in a week. Guess why? Because the rich guy there got shot in the head because he was a piece of shit drug dealer. Game over. Let's start anew.
Yeah, I mean, if
that's
the whale,
not a true story, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, but when the player that comes in and loses a lot and doesn't mind losing a lot, whenever that changes, well, that changes the cash inflow to the game, and there's not as much to be won, or there's none to be won, and that game's going to go away very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, poker is going to attract some of the most volatile and un-Craig-like personalities.
I'll take that as a compliment.
In town, to where you can't build. I know Christian, like, don't build a house on the sand. It's like poker. Like we're on the beach. We're trying to like just putting up some shacks and tents, and there's no rocks on the poker beach from which to lay a foundation on. I got a little lost in that metaphor. I'm so sorry.
To finish up on the advice, I ended up, as I also said in the first episode, I don't deal this game anymore. At the time, it was my pet project. I absolutely loved it. I protected it. And when it went away, I got some advice from a friend. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Henry. He's a great friend of mine, been a friend for a long time. I actually met him through that poker game. And he pulled me aside.
Oh, now I know why you got so mad when people were shit-talking Henry the other day.
And he pulled me aside and he acknowledged that it's not his place, but he said, I know this is probably upsetting to you that, you're not going to be able to deal this game anymore. And I know what it means to you financially. I know what it means to you personally. You really enjoy it. You met a lot of people here. He said, it's not my place. I'm not your father, but this is some fatherly type advice. He said, just take the high road. It is always the better choice. He said, when you're angry, you want to burn somebody's house down, you want to curse somebody out, you want to tell someone, fuck you, never going to talk to you again, whatever. He said, it's just, you're always better off to take the high road. And I tell you what, I took the advice in that particular scenario, but it's come true so many times for me where it's just not worth it. That spiteful anger, and that's like life advice. That's not just poker. I mean, it could apply to poker as well, but it's just some great advice, and I'm constantly thankful for Henry's friendship.
I am a powerful machine, and anger is my fuel.
I mean, to each their own, I suppose.
Low Road Caitlin, that's what we call her at the table.
Low Road Caitlin, for multiple reasons. They call me that.
All right, y'all ready for a top 5?
Yeah, let's get into that top 5 of the Texas poker.
In line with our advice, we wanted to give some advice and talk about the top 5 ways to spot a noob at the poker table. And if you want to take the flip side of that, it's the top 5 ways to avoid looking like a noob when you may or may not be one. So,
get into it.
Number 5, the manner in which you stack your chips. First and foremost, stack your chips.
Well, yeah. So that's a rule to some degree for people that don't know, like especially in tournament poker. You don't have to have them in orderly or neat stacks, but they can't be in a pile in front of you because the other players of the game have the right to know how much you're playing.
Correct.
So you can do like a really chaotic. I know like a lot of people, they'll stack their green chips in stacks of 35 rather than 20s, so that most of the people at the table can't figure. But we can always eyeball it.
There's some unspoken rule to stacking chips, like, stack them in 20s, like you just alluded to, but some people will stack them maybe in 22s or 25. So it's, it's just harder to tell. But I mean, typically you're going to stack them in 20s.
It's really hilarious when they do the extra tall tower, but they only do like 2 of them.
That's my style. I don't know why you're making fun of me right now, Caitlin.
You never have enough chips to make a tall tower, Eric.
You're not wrong.
So when you're stacking in stacks of 20, it's very simple. You have, green chips, $25 chips. A stack of 20 is 500, and a stack
it's standard. That's how they come in the rack.
Yeah, a stack of 20 red chips is 100. It makes for quick counting because, as you said, other players have the right to kind of know what is in your stack. And so at that point, when you're asked, even though you don't technically have to answer, you can very quickly deduce how much is in your stack versus if you just have a pile or if you have 27 stacks of 10 chips for some ungodly known reason. I don't know why noobs do that, but they just insist on stacking. Like you talked about the greens, they'll stack their greens in stacks of 4 because that's 100, and they have 7 stacks of 4 green chips, and it's just obnoxious. They're taking up square footage on the table.
I honestly don't mind how people stack their chips in front of them so much is when they're counting out a bet. And they do it 2 chips at a time. I'm like, please just announce how much you want and let the dealer do it for you. I can't watch you count out like $50, $10 at a time. I don't want to. It makes me sad.
So why don't you like the metric system, Craig? Why are stacks of 10 bad?
Stacks of 10 are bad for a lot of reasons. It's really just more tradition, I think.
Can we talk about racks?
Yeah, why racks are...
Quit looking, don't look at me like that, you freaking pervert.
Yeah, you mean like chip racks?
Oh, yeah, chip racks. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, if you ever notice, a barrel of chips in a tray comes to 20 exactly. And that's for a reason. Another little-known piece of trivia, I don't know if... Caitlin, you might not even know this. I might teach you. If you have a stack of 20 chips, like within a millimeter, if you put a $100 bill or any dollar bill next to it, same height. Did you know that?
Long ways or it's short ways like that? It seems too short. Really?
It's like perfect. It's like 20 chips, dollar bill.
I'm gonna have to see that. I would have thought the chips would be slightly higher by a few millimeters.
Some chips do vary in their width. I mean, you're talking very, very, very minimal amounts, but like a Paulson chip. I usually only play with
plaques. I was thinking you were talking about plaques because that's all I have familiarity with.
I only play with the big ones. Yeah, just the big ones. So that's one of them is first and foremost, stack your chips, but also like know how to stack your chips. Another big portion of that is put your big chips where they can be seen. You don't want to say you have, $100 chips and you're playing 1-2. If you happen to have some black chips, some $100 chips, you can't have them sitting in the back because if you go all in and someone looks quickly and they think, oh, she just has $200, but you have 3 black chips behind your stacks of reds that they couldn't see, they could call, and technically they're held to the call. But if you're in a casino or a card club, the floor can actually rule that those chips were not visible.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's happened.
I know, like if the dealer catches you and you've got like you're hiding higher denomination chips in the back, they'll ask you to put them out front and they'll call the floor over.
Yeah, that's like a prophylactic measure. They're trying to keep that from happening.
Are you using prophylactic in a non-sexual content? What's it called?
Context.
Thank you.
Are you okay with that or no? Do you want me to say it differently?
I've just been single for so long. I hate when you bring...
So just to be clear, it's a prophylactic that there are not big chips in the back.
Correct. Prophylactic from the back. Be careful. No, I mean, it's just one of those things because it is an awkward ruling. I was actually at a casino one time in college when that happened. Somebody had a whole stack of greens in the back side of their stack, and they had a sea of reds, and they went all in, and they got verbally snap called from somebody. And the floor actually ruled that $500 did not count towards the all-in because they were hidden. I mean, they were completely hidden. And I actually agreed with the floor's ruling. I think it's fine. But it's also the player's responsibility to ask how much. Before you're calling an all-in, I mean, you really should know how much it is, and you can get a count. Number 4, buying in. Know what to do. So you have cash. You're at a table perhaps you made your first buy-in at the cage, but if you go to the felt, you want to rebuy. Or if you're just at a home game, say Eric's game, and you pull out three $20 bills, you're going to buy $60 worth of chips. What do? It's kind of a casino rule. It's not specific to poker. Just put the money on the table. Pass it to whatever authority figure there is, pass it over to the dealer. Let them figure it out. I mean, if you're trying to hand it directly to them, that's kind of a no-no. In a casino, a dealer will never take cash directly from your hands, and that's because of cameras and whatever else. But money on the table says, I'd like chips instead of paper. Please give me some chips. A lot of times you find people, for whatever reason, just super awkward about the cash. Like they're not there to play for money. They're just like, they're holding the cash, but then nothing's happening. And like, well, what do I do with it?
I've actually, in my game, because I play with a lot of noobs, I've put a sentence in my intro email that says, set your money on the table in front of you and the dealer will change it for chips between the next hands. So
yeah, it's just kind of one of those little like cultural things that's, like I said, more specific to casinos than just poker. It's kind of all games where you're going to turn cash into chips. But yeah, it's just kind of one of those things you can spot somebody that's not comfortable in the environment because they don't.
Well, and I was a little surprised when I went to my first home game, post second shot, as it were, and I didn't see a cage and had no idea what to do with my money, and I threw it on the table, and somehow it all got figured out. But I think I got a little lucky.
Yeah, not to be a bitch, but if you're min buying, that's pretty indicative of noobness.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a noob, so.
Shots fired. Thank you.
Shots fired. Pew pew.
Number 3. This is a very specific rule, but a very common rule, and the most common, I'll say, broken rule or misunderstood rule, the 1-chip rule, which can actually be a 2-chip or a 3-chip rule in some circumstances. But the bottom line is, when a large chip that more than covers the bet you're facing is tossed silently, that is a call. That's a call every single time, as far as I know, in every place that poker is played in the world.
Yeah. It's
a very, very common rule. And the reason for that is, say the bet is $5 and it gets to you and you just toss a green chip in without saying anything, that is going to be considered a $5 call. Even if you have $400 in red, it is not the dealer's responsibility to determine on your behalf that that's a raise to 25.
Yeah, no, I recently started a gig where I'm teaching ladies how to play poker for the first time, and I'm trying to direct them towards, verbalizing. Always verbalize your action. Think it through and then verbalize your action. It's going to appear stronger in any event.
That's the safest way. If you verbalize your action, you cannot go wrong.
Do what you intend first, but then also to be more confident and self-assured about the action.
But also just to
in the context of talking about, newer, inexperienced players.
For anyone that maybe isn't familiar with that rule, it could also be 2 chips. Say you're facing a $30 bet, and you sometimes you'll see somebody throw in 2 green chips. That's kind of the same concept, because the first one doesn't cover the bet. The second one is considered the 1 chip.
Yep.
That would be cast into the 1-chip rule, but you can't raise to 50 in that regard.
For the dealer to count it as a raise, or for it has to be at least, what's the exact rule you say it?
Well, double that you're facing.
I know, but if you're like, what is the rule? Like if I put in, if it was like, I put in accidentally too many chips, but it's like more than halfway to a raise.
Correct.
So then the dealer rules that it has to, thank you, more than halfway to a raise, then it has to.
So, but the bottom line is,
they hold you to the min raise.
You don't always have to verbalize, but in this specific, what you would do, say it's a $5 bet and you want to throw in a green chip and you want to raise to 25, you can say raise, you can say raise it up, you can say we're playing for more, you can say make it 25.
You can even make eye contact with the dealer and just gesture that you're raising. I mean, I play with a deaf gentleman who he just gives him a little...
The old thumbs up.
The old thumbs up.
Kick it up a notch.
Yeah. He's hilarious. He loves to troll me. If I knew what the hell he was trolling me for, I'd be really upset probably.
I heard it's also customary if when the dealer pushes a big pot to throw in a single oversized chip. What's that about?
It's it's debatable. It's debatable.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to state the amount. In fact, the dealer is likely to just assume that is a full tip and no change is due. Just take it.
I mean, that's what I would do.
It's so awkward as a player when, like, you throw like let's say, you want a $30 pot, a $1 tip is appropriate. So you hand them a $5 and you say, oh, can you chop that up for me? But you don't say it loud enough. And they're just like, thank you. And they pocket the $5. And so then you're like faced with the delivery, like, shoot, am I going to really extract this $4?
They'll never hear you.
You mistakenly took, or do I just say, all right, enjoy my $5?
Yeah, the one chip rule, not applying to tips, but I mean, just to recap, it's very simple. Just state your intent with the dealer. Kind of always, you really can't go wrong there.
But yeah, that's something you can do as like. Why do we think like non-experienced players are like our like target audience? But yeah, if you don't want to tip the full $5, just ask the dealer to chop it up for you.
Caitlin, I can tell you from extensive dealing experience, there are people that play not just a fair amount of hours of poker, but they play for significant sums of money and they still do not understand the one chip rule. And they will look at me. I have dealt to them numerous times. I have explained it numerous times. They will be in a position where it's a $35 raise and they throw out a black chip. And I'm like, that's a call. And then I'm going on, I let the next person call 35 and they're like, no, I raised to 100. I'm like, no, you didn't. You threw one chip. That's a call. And I'll point to his chip stack. Look, I've got plenty of smaller chips if I wanted to make it 35. And I'm like, that's not my responsibility. We've been through this 612 times prior. Still doesn't understand it. And without fail, the next time that it's his bet, he'll put out a $100 chip and he'll say 100, thinking that he's being smart, but he's not facing a bet. You don't have to state anything at that point. You can just toss one chip when it's your bet. You're determining the size. I mean, you can do whatever you want. One chip's going to be determined, whatever its face value is, if you don't say anything. It's incredible how many people play a lot of poker and don't know. So in this context where we're talking about people kind of just getting started and not wanting to look like a noob, that's one of those things where if you understand the one chip rule, if I might have been under the suspicion that you were a noob, but you understand the one chip rule and you toss in a quarter and you say raise, or you make sure the dealer knows you're raising, I'm like, oh shit, maybe I had this person wrong.
Speaking of like things that signal that you're a noob, I know we're doing the countdown. I don't know if this is one of ours because I don't pay attention when you're doing the breakdown before we start recording. But as like a female poker player, like when I go to play in Vegas or California or a place where I know I'm not a well-known player, I try to remind myself not to riffle chips so that people can assume that
so you're kind of going second level. You're trying to look like a noob a little bit.
Yeah, well, like I don't need to be riffling chips like confidently so that I know I've spent, a great portion of my life around a poker table. That
just let them think you're an unsuspecting female. Stumbling into a poker game.
Money, leave me the hell alone. Yeah, like I'm just be nice to me.
Is that when you use stacks of 10 chips too?
Yeah, might I recommend stacking in 10s and not knowing where to put your money when you want to buy in.
I can't riffle less than 10 chips at a time, or it looks really emasculating for me.
All right, number 2, playing super passive. Aggression is simply a part of this game. I've told many people it is hard to make money calling in this game.
Yeah, definitely. I recently took on a gig where I see these ladies once a week and we're starting from the ground up. Like they've never played in a casino. They've barely even played with their friends in a basement in high school. We're building from the ground up, and how I started my very first lesson with them is I was like, we're going to go over a lot of rules. This is a very complicated game, but if you only remember one thing leaving this lesson tonight, it's that the most low risk, consistent strategy, the best strategy that I want y'all to learn is that you're going to make the most money playing a small number of hands aggressively.
Right. Tight but aggressive from Rounders. That was the advice from Mike McDermott to his dean. Is you want to be in there tight but aggressive, and that's really kind of the way to be. You have to have some aggression. And this kind of speaks more to balance. Again, not going to get into the weeds of strategy and whatnot, but you can't just only be aggressive when you have hands. Sometimes you have to show some aggression, give some action, and that's what you see so much in this state is just aggressive poker being played. But that's because it's such a common activity and people really get it.
It annoys me because it enables a whole class and society of... And that's why people hate nits, because it's a very ungenerous strategy. You're playing like a low risk. It's like putting your money in, what's it called? It's
like playing face up. why are we even hiding our cards? You're only going to be in there when you have the nuts.
Yeah, no, there's such a large population of, especially at the higher stakes level, at the 2-5 games that pop up at the Lodge and TCH. I find a lot of the main staples, they'll say to your face, I don't bluff because I don't have to. And they just literally wait for the easy money to show up, and they're happy to go into the club and fold for 2 hours straight. And granted, I've been card dead or in a situation where I fold, so I don't want to like judge knitting too harshly, especially when I'm appearing on live stream and you can see my whole cards. Like that's definitely a different level of pressure. So I'll be measured with my words, but you know, you can play the knit strategy and you can make it consistent hourly, but you're not going to be very popular doing it.
Yeah. So Eric, I've been to your game a few times, but you've been to your game every single time.
It's true.
As far as passive play, I'm sure you see a lot of it. I've seen a fair amount at the times that I've been there, but passive play, people just calling when they have really, really strong hands or strong draws specifically and not betting them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, first of all, I think it's a common thing to call a lot of bets when it's one of your first few times at a poker table. So I'll see, you know, someone limps in, and then there's 4 more people that limp in and no one raises, and the big blind checks. And then it's like check through the flop and the turn. Or if someone does come out and bet, like they're only ever calling. They're never actually placing a bet. They're never raising. And then, 90 minutes in, they make their first raise, and it's like, oh, I think that they're pretty far up the hand tree right now.
Yeah.
It's just fairly transparent and easy to play against.
Well, and something that they won't understand until it happens a few times is they make that hand, right? They hit the nuts on the river. They have the nut straight, and it's like, there's $3 in the pot.
That's right.
How do I get value when there's only $3 in the pot? If you had bet your draw along the way, or raised somebody else's bet with your draw along the way, that you can really build that pot and make it where now instead of a $3 pot, there's a $25 pot. Now
or you can get
value
felted.
bet. Yeah, true. Buy a bigger.
Just bomb it in there. Get it in there, huh?
Yeah,
I'm sure it's coming.
it
Maybe
in
they'll
there.
run it twice.
Maybe.
All right, let's move on to the next one.
The last one is so ruthlessly simple, but it happens so much. A player checks when they're facing a bet. So the prerequisite to this is you have to have a hand that's live, right? So if you have a hand, that means you've put some money into the pot at this point. You have a live hand. Pay attention. It's kind of a simple rule, but you're involved in a pot that you have a chance to win. You should pay attention. If your hand is so bad that you're not paying attention, and then the dealer will let you know, hey, it's your turn, and you just blindly tap the table for a check, just kick it in there. If you're that disconnected from what is going on, just flick the cards away.
Yeah.
The dealer will scoop them up, and then you're done. You're free of having to pay attention until the next hand. But if you're just so dumbly not even going to look around and realize that there's a bet, it's $15 to call. It's not free. It's not a check. Even pre-flop, it's $2. You're never going to see the flop for zero. Not ever. Not ever.
That was a concept that when I was teaching poker to the ladies, their first time for many of them playing, that they got tripped up on, was that they didn't realize they had to call the blind to get to the flop when then checking becomes an option, but that pre-flop checking is not an option for anybody but the big blind closing the action, big blind or straddle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible how many people get into formal poker environments, like in a casino or, in a card club here, something like that, where they don't even understand how it works, how things go clockwise. And when all bets are equal, that's the end of a betting street, things like that. They just don't understand it. It's amazing that they get to the point where they're willing to.
It takes repetition because you and I and Eric have exposure from poker earlier in our lives. We take a lot of these things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's the next one?
That's the last one. That was number 1, Caitlin. We usually stop at number 1.
Number 0. If you're Craig friggin' Cyr.
All right. This
Craig
would be
Edwin Cyr.
Not correct. This would be our one.
Craig Eduardo.
This would be our one hand review segment. Last week we kind of.
No, you already took it up talking about your $20 all in.
No, that didn't.
Oh yeah,
I didn't go into
depth. You doubled up in a 25-50 cent game. Let's talk about that.
I didn't. Okay, easy now.
Can you tell I'm in a punchy mood today?
All right, Caitlin, fine. Tell us about the biggest pot you've ever won.
So I was playing on the TCH live stream, and I think I touched on last week how I thought the week prior it had played like a 5-5 game and it wasn't really that deep. This week I showed up with, two 2K bullets thinking that would suffice, and it didn't. So I was playing 4K. Throughout the stream, I played fairly snug. I only had like one opportunity to bluff, but it was against John Driver. So I opted not to do that. It would have been like a bluff with air, like a gutter draw from the big blind, and I had the range advantage, and I probably would have gotten through, but I chose not to explore it. Anyway, at the end of the stream, I'm pretty much even. I get doubled up through Chaz. I get full value out of jacks on a king high board, just knew where I was the whole time, and just extracted full value, so I got the full double up. So now I'm sitting on 6.5K. And I get into a hand with Chaz and Boots again, who are both enjoying the libations. I've been participating, but they're definitely a few rounds ahead of me. And I get queens in the straddle, and they've been folding to all my aggression all night. Like on the stream, you can watch it. Every single 3 and 4 bet just got folds out. I didn't see any flops with pre-flop aggression, and I hadn't really had an opportunity to play a big pot. So beyond the previous double up with Chaz, so I decided to flat with queens and take it 3 ways. Chaz is in position and Boots is out of position, and I'm guy in the middle. So like, that's not sound poker strategy, y'all. Like, this was a exploitative move. And then it was a queen high flop, queen deuce 4.
Dreamy.
Queen deuce 4. It was the dream. I do check raise the flop, and Boots comes along, and then on the turn the wheel comes in. So ace 5 makes the straight. And I bet chunky, close to pot size bet on the turn. And then I boat up on the river, queens full of 4s. And at this point, my SPR is 1-1. I think I might get a call, so I put it all in. It's a $3,500 bet by the time we get to the river. And Boots takes a long time, but he deduces that I don't have queens or ace queen because I didn't 3-bet it, and I'd been playing very straightforward and solid all night. So eventually he found the call, and I get to scoop like a 13K pot.
Were you able to see his holdings? What?
He had king queen. I didn't see his holding, but somebody else who saw it told me later. King queen.
This a little bit speaks to what we were talking about as far as building the pot. Now I know you had a really strong. I mean, you flop the nuts, right? Top set, but rather than like waiting until you fill up, you were able to win this giant pot because you built it up as you went. That pot was big enough where you could stuff it on the river, and it wasn't an outsized bet. It's not, you didn't bet 4.5 times the size of the pot on the river.
Yeah.
You made it where your SPR, like you said, was around 1.
Honestly, when he put it in, like, I think he thought he was paying off a straight.
Yeah.
He did not, but he had eliminated queens from my range. But I mean, like, that's a move I get to pull once against Boots, I can't. Now I'm in these large games, I can't flat pairs, especially now that I'm talking on a friggin' podcast. I can't flat pairs pre with any type of regularity.
Yeah, but you could show up with 5-6 next time for the straight, or ace 5 suited for the straight. And
you heard it here first, boys. She always has it.
Yeah, that was a good hand. I enjoyed hearing about it the first time, but yeah, a little more in depth. I like the context too, talking about how you had your perceived image at the table from playing for 4 or 5 hours prior to that hand happening, and that's super important. Context is important. You have to know how you're seen at a poker table. Sometimes you just look like this aggressive maniac, and then you get a value hand. You got to play it the same way.
I've been on the other side of that for sure. Like last night I played with Scotland, who's a popular personality that appears quite often on the Lodge stream. We were playing in a 1-3 match stat game, and he didn't play a hand for an hour and a half, and then he 3-bet me with 3-4 suited, and he flopped trips and turned to boat, and I had an overpair. Never saw it coming.
Yeah, you're never going to see that coming. Ever.
He hadn't played for an hour and a half, so it's hectic out there in those streets, y'all. Watch your feet for landmines.
Speaking of watching out, we're on to your favorite segment, Harsh
but fair. This is a segment where we give constructive feedback that if it hurts your feelings, you're not allowed to be mad about it.
Do you want to address Eric down first?
Okay.
Or are we not Are we only criticizing each other?
No, we definitely have to criticize our guest.
Okay.
Eric, I'm going to be critical in that you didn't shit on Craig at any point At no point did you dress him down in any way. You didn't criticize him for being too uptight or high strung or tucking his polo shirts into his underwear under his jeans, which I am so confident he does for fashion. So yeah.
Okay.
And then when you receive your criticism, you have to say harsh but fair.
Harsh but fair.
Yep.
My criticism of Eric is that on the way here, he did not wear a seatbelt. That's against the law.
Because we took a cargo van and he was sitting like crisscross applesauce in the back like a good boy.
Okay.
Harsh but fair.
Okay.
I love this segment.
All right, me now.
Craig, you have a bit of a bulge at the sort of base of your torso where your suspenders connect to your underwear.
I'll work on it.
Harsh but fair. You gotta say harsh.
Harsh. That is harsh, but fair.
All right, Craig. Your feedback is not related to the podcast. It's related to the fact that your meridian rhythms are completely off because your wife and child have been gone for a week and you have not been taking care of yourself. And as your friend, it's really disappointing.
My already ridiculous night owl hours are even more becoming like early morning hours.
Yeah, you're keeping a poker player's hours.
Yeah.
And we're sad. Don't do that.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it's one thing to say that I'm never up before 10 a.m. It's another thing entirely to say that I've been waking up at 2 p.m. It is not good.
It's not a fun feeling to wake up a few hours before the sunset.
So do you have any advice?
You have to say harsh but fair.
Yeah. I mean, that's harsh, but fair.
Yeah, I'm a good friend.
All right. Roast Caitlin, please.
Caitlin, I know you like to be fashionably late. It's not okay to show up 30 minutes after the game ends.
I was already in the Uber and I wanted to talk to Craig. Also, I was sad. I literally needed a friend. So what Eric's talking about is last night I got just waxed at the lodge and I was in an Uber home and I was like, I literally need someone to look me in the eye and tell me I have value as a human. So I knew Craig was dealing this game. So I had them take me to the game and I was going to play if they were still, but by the time I was there, the game had broken.
You're not allowed to defend yourself. That's
I'm
not
so
what
sorry.
this is about.
Thank you. Thank you for King. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Harsh but fair, Eric. Thank you.
Caitlin, I want to just point out that we cannot make a single sexual innuendo at any point during the recording without you taking it down that line. I can't talk about a backdoor draw. I can't talk about the fact that you got waxed at the lodge. Can't talk about getting pummeled. We can't talk about how this table that we're recording on is impenetrable. I can't use the term prophylactic without you constantly just going down the middle school path and turning it into a sexual joke.
Harsh but fair.
Can we please? Can we
I'm just
please?
a messy girl that loves a messy time.
All right. I do believe that was harsh, but I do believe that was fair.
I literally love this segment. It's the best idea I've ever had.
All right.
Try to hurt your friend's feelings. Do it in under 20 seconds if possible.
So next week, Caitlin, are you going to be here?
I was literally dead asleep and I get a call from Craig at 1:30 that's like, your ride's here. I was so disoriented. I just all of a sudden I'm in a van and now I'm in front of a microphone.
Your kidnap
Half of
van
me is still in bed.
Your kidnap van is right outside your door.
I cried so much this morning.
She stumbled out of the door. It was amazing.
And you're here. What do you know? We're here. So Caitlin and I will be back next week. We might be able to con somebody else other than Eric, to be on the podcast now that it's been done.
Whoever we get to come will not have as good a mutton chops or circus skills as Eric. 100%.
Harsh but fair.
No. We're done. That was just genuine. Compliment, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been the Texas Poker Experience. Thank you to everyone who's been loyal to our show. We're going to continue to bring you stuff until Craig can't deal with me anymore because just having me so close in your life is just emotionally taxing. But until that time, see you next week.
Yes, Eric, thanks for coming on, and everyone, thank you for listening. Do not be a nit.
Always straddle.